Hi, everybody. It's starting to snow. You know what that means. Snowball fight incoming. Got ya. Welcome to Fiddlesticks and Stitches. I'm Fiddle. Today's projects are a flour and sugar sack, a broom, mop, and this cute little octopus fire set with tools. As always, link to scavenger hunt and free printable pattern is in the description box below. Before we get started with the flour and sugar sack, prep your area by taping a grocery bag to your work surface. For this part, we'll need our needle and thread and fabric. The first thing we're going to do is cut our 5x5 square fabric into unequal halves, fold them in half, and stitch up the side. I added a little bit of liquid stitch along that edge to keep it from fraying. Once it was dry, I turned it right side out and found me a scrap piece of foam that I could just stick inside of there to give it some bulk. This is just temporary, so we can seal up the end of our bag, and we're going to do that by folding it like you would a present and using our liquid stitch to glue it down. Now we can stuff them. I used balled up grocery bag to add a little bit of weight to the base if you want them to be freestanding. And to seal the bag shut, I just folded the edge over, sewn along the line, and used a little bit of liquid stitches to hold it together. Fiddlesticks. I forgot to add chalk to the scavenger hunt. I apologize for that. But anyways, I grabbed my tan chalk, I think maybe a gray and black, and paintbrushes and used that to add detail to it. At first I used the paintbrushes, but then I realized it was a lot easier just to actually draw with the chalk onto the bag itself and then use the paintbrush to rub it in and mix it. I made sure to highlight areas where I thought it would get the dirtiest, like on the bottom and on the sides, and especially over the seam where it would be sewn and re-sewn over again. I was satisfied with how they looked, I went ahead and took my black marker and labeled them. I think they turned out pretty cute. Now we're going to be making the broom and the mop. For this part, we're going to need twine and glue. We're going to start by cutting 20 1.5-inch lengths of string. Next, separate the strings into their individual strands. I used the same methods to making the broom and laundry day, although I did use a thicker dowel. Once they're all separated, lay out 2 beads of glue on the plastic that you taped over your work surface. Make sure they're far enough apart so your string's not touching the glue of the other one. One set is for our mop and the other is for the broom. Once you have them all laid out, add another bead of glue over top and use your finger to press down the glue into the fibers. Allow it to completely dry before moving on to the next step. For this, I stole my cat's brush, but she really don't care as long as it's not being used on her. Anyway, use a wire brush of some sort on just one of the rows. The mop, we want to kind of leave it stringy, but we will go over it like maybe once or twice with it. And don't forget to save the leftovers from brushing them out. Those come in handy as grass. To make the broom, peel it off of your plastic, put a dab of glue at the end, and start wrapping it around your dowel until you have it the size that you want. I think I went a little too big on this part, but that's okay. Next, we're going to take a single strand, wrap it around where we just wrapped the bristles around. Starting from above where we added our bristles, down past to where the dowel is. I secured the end with a clip, but you could just add a dab of super glue. Then I gave it a brush and a trim, and the broom was done. Now, to finish the mop, follow all the previous steps, except this time we're going to make a mixture of water and glue and dip the mop in it, and twist it up just like we would a mop if we were wringing it out, and we'll set it up against something so it can dry. This will harden it, and your mop may even stand up on its own once it's dry. The next thing we're going to be making is the fire set tools, but we have a little bit of prep work to do before that. First, we need to cut our patterns out, and then we're going to tape them to our aluminum and cut them out. Make sure that you can see through your tape so you know where you're cutting. The first 2 pieces we're going to need are the shovel sidewall and the bottom. Align the center of both pieces on your piece of tape and use it to hold it in place. Use super glue and baking soda to build up the seams, and remember these are supposed to look cast iron, so the pitting is okay, it actually gives it more character. To make the handles, grab your round nose pliers along with your nippers. We need to make the bend at the top wider, so I took my round nose pliers and slowly inched them inwards and squeezing at the same time so it opened it up. Once I had it opened, I grabbed a hold of it real tight and grabbed my regular pliers and closed it back around it, but not all the way. Then I used my nippers to cut off the wavy portion of the bobby pin. This will give us our hook so we can hook it on our little octopus arms. I used this method for all of the tools except for the tongs because I left the bobby pin in one complete piece for those. Also remember to wear protection because these pieces can go flying on you. To attach the shovel head to the handle, I put it on the outside and held it there with my finger and used a little bit of baking soda before I put the glue on, so that way there was something in the cracks for it to stick to. Be careful and try to avoid getting it on your fingers. I repeated the process a few times to build up the glue and baking soda mix. Then I used my round nose pliers to fold down the flaps that we had left on our shovel sidewall. I added one more dab of super glue and baking soda over top of the folded in metal just to make sure it stayed. The next piece we're going to work on is the tongs. I didn't record me straightening the bobby pin out, but the one side of the bobby pin that's wavy, straighten out with your flat pliers. Use something round like a marker or a pencil to curve your metal. To attach the ends to the bobby pins, I used my thumbnail to hold on to the little nubs that are on the bobby pin, and then I used my other hand to wrap the aluminum around the post. Super glue and baking soda to secure them in place. and do the exact process for the other side. I gave mine a little bit of a bend after I was done because I didn't think it was really bent in far enough. The next tool we're going to be making is the fire poker. For this, we're going to need maybe about a half of an inch piece of very fine wire. This is going to be the little hook at the end of the poker. To attach it, I held it on there with a piece of tape because when I tried to just hold it with my fingers, I didn't feel safe enough for that chemical reaction and how close it was. Here, I should have done the baking soda first before the glue, but I didn't. I did it backwards. So, put some baking soda on before you put the glue on. It seems to work better when you do it that way. Once you get it attached, it's the repetitive process of adding super glue, adding baking soda, back and forth until you get it built up all around your little piece of wire that you attached and the end of the stick. It's okay if it's not shaped perfectly because later on we're going to take some sandpaper to it. Once you're happy with the shape, set it aside and we'll move on to the next tool we're going to be making. And that is the little brush. And for this you need the cigar lid that I showed you on Patreon. First we're going to cut the lid. I attempted to use the cutter thingies and it did not work so well. But cut it about half an inch long from the closing part of the lid. Then take a heated up piece of metal, I used my pokey tool, to poke a hole in the top of the lid. This is the hole that we're going to set our handle into. Baking soda and super glue it in place. For the bristles of the brush, do exactly like we did for the mop and the broom, except for this time we're gluing them into the lid itself. Set it aside to dry, and it's time to move on to the octopus, so grab your cold porcelain clay and clay tools. Before we start the octopus, take your pattern and put it up underneath of your plastic sheet so you can use it as a template. Then we're going to roll out 8 snakes of clay. 4 of them follow the pattern on your paper. These would be the arms that hold the tools. The other 4 arms is completely up to you on how you bend them. Set them aside and let them stiffen up a little bit. Next, I went on to making the hat. Using the same fabric that we did for the flour and sugar bags, I made 2 circles and a long rectangle strip that was able to wrap around my finger once. Using the smaller circle as a pattern, I laid it on top of the bigger circle and traced it out. Then, finding the center point, I cut it out like pizza slices and left the tabs so I can use them to attach inside of the hat. I do apologize for the horrible angle. I did a lot of filming in one day, and unfortunately, it was with not the greatest camera angle. Yay, now we can start working on the octopus itself. First thing you need to do is glue your beads together with super glue and baking soda, of course. Side note, our legs should only be sitting there for maybe 10-15 minutes at the most. After that, it'll start cracking really bad, and we want to try to avoid that. To attach the legs to the wood beads, I used a bit of tacky glue and smoothed the excess clay over the beads. After you get the legs attached, we can move on to covering up the rest of the head of the octopus. I did this by rolling out a thin sheet of clay and laying it over top of the bead and smoothing it out with a tool. It is a bit finicky to get the clay in between the arms and the head itself, but once you do, it's pretty easy from there. I used my fingers to smooth out the clay, but this is a good place where a tool would come in handy. My hair is all over the place in this clip. I am sorry about that. It does whatever it wants. Anyway, this is where I'm putting on the seed beads for eyes. Now would also be a good time to glue the hat on, and I just did that with tacky glue. One last look before painting. I think it looks pretty cute. I gave everything a base coat of matte black to help give it the appearance of cast iron. Once the black dried, I gave a dry brush of white, and while I was doing it, I thought about where ashes would collect on them. One last thing before we can call this project done, we have to trim the bristles of our brush down. I made mine about 1.5 inches long. Another way you can determine how long to make your bristles is hang your broom on your arm, and where the bristles touch the table, cut them off there. And with that, it brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed the little projects that we've made today. Here's one last look. As always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It helps me out a lot. And I'll see you next time.